Hello and welcome to another Windows Management User Group clinic. And in this session we're going to be talking to an SCCM technical author, Martyn Coupland, who's a System Center consultant over at Inframon Limited in the UK, and basically get some experiences from Martyn on how he got on writing his book. After which we'll then try and dive into a Q&A on ConfigMgr, where it's essentially a free-for-all. I haven't checked Twitter to see if there's any questions in there, but we've got several questions here that we can cover off, and like I say, it's a free-for-all, so just chime in at that point if you've got anything that, for example, a solution you've just put in place with System Center, ConfigMgr, or a bug that you've recently found, some bizarre behavior. So thank you very much for joining us this evening, Martyn.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do you want to give us a little bit of a background on yourself, who you are, and the book that you wrote?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, as Peter quite rightly says, yeah, up in the world quite recently.
So do you want to read that accolade off, that title, because it's in the text box that might not travel onto the
yeah. So
go on.
So yeah, recently I was promoted at Inframon to a senior architect, and what a senior architect sort of is recognised as is not just someone who has experience of designing and deploying solutions in a couple of specific areas of System Center, so let's say like ConfigMgr and Orchestrate, for example, but experience of design, deploy across the whole stack, really. So going from a couple of, nearly 3 years ago now, just over 3 years ago when I started at Inframon.
Okay.
I've gone from basically a
T-boy.
Yeah, T-boy is one word.
We all start off as T-boy, yeah. And then
ConfigMgr whipping boy, more like.
That's the one. Yeah. Is that what he is now? Yeah. Hey, you're stealing his thunder. Come on.
Sorry.
And yeah, it's kind of gone up from there, really. So obviously the explosion of System Center, you might call it, has somewhat helped that and forced me down that route. It's always I never really intended to specialise in one area. That just kind of happened with previous roles. It's generic systems management and server engineering, really. It's something I always kind of liked playing around with. SMS back in the day. Obviously moving into ConfigMgr, and it kind of progressed from there. I think people who genuinely know ConfigMgr have a wide range of knowledge anyway. There's so much to know to start with. It covers, especially nowadays, so many different areas, even just in certain aspects of ConfigMgr, really. So I guess, I mean, for me, one of my bits I love working in ConfigMgr is OSD. So okay. I love operating system deployment. I think the limits of what you can do are still to be reached as far as I'm concerned.
It's very extensible, isn't it, OSD? You can fit a lot in. In fact, you see vendors like 1E, Adaptiva and such like introducing custom task sequence steps and actually putting code in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess even if you just look at MDT, that adds a whole host of other steps in. I will never I will never do OSD without MDT, just because of the extra extensibility it gives you, just on top of what ConfigMgr is already brilliant at, in my opinion. And yeah, I mean, you get what a lot of people don't realise is you get a lot of source code samples for extending the task sequence engine yourself with MDT, especially for any guys that use the UDI wizard, the user driven installation wizard. So obviously you can create your own pages in the designer, but there's also sample code in there as well if you're into your development to write your own wizard pages in C++ as well. And obviously a lot of samples on the net. Obviously ConfigMgr, not just ConfigMgr, System Center as a whole has a massive community following. God knows how many sites
It is quite huge, actually, isn't it? I noticed that because every time I go out and do a Google search, it's like casting a net out, see what you can get back. And it's the variety of URLs coming back. You notice the one Stack Overflow for development coming back quite regularly, Marty Forum, and a whole bunch of regular ones. But it's surprising how many new URLs or websites I often notice. I double take and that's a new one.
Yeah, and it always seems to be the most bizarre of problems you're actually looking for a solution to. It seems to be on the site that you've never actually heard of, and it was a blog from years ago that no one's commented on, no one's posted since or before, and it turns out to be the solution to your problems. But I guess it's a lot like PowerShell in a way. So I mean, if you can look for anything to do with PowerShell, and you will find someone that's done it. ConfigMgr and System Center is no different, in my opinion. If you don't quite know how to do something, there are a lot of examples of people like those guys in the community that help people, all the guys that speak at the Microsoft events as well, all of the events that are hosted around the world every week by community leaders. There's a massive amount of resource out there for people to tap into, and get it to do exactly what you want. I don't recall an operating system deployment engagement that I've done, certainly recently, where I can actually say that I've had issues with being able to implement what the customers asked for. It is that extensible. It helps me having a coding background, don't get me wrong. So if the need comes to extend the product in some way, I can generally do that. But that's more of a testament to how extensible the product groups have made ConfigMgr, in my opinion. It's just as a person you have the tools to be able to do that.
That's very insightful. Thank you for summarising that. And congratulations for being a senior architect.
Thank you.
I'm a senior architect, but for different reasons. I needed a hi-hat there. Age. Okay, for those who haven't figured it out. So that leads me into a first question tonight on the subject of authoring. What made you decide to write a book, Martyn?
So it was a few reasons, really. I guess. I guess the first thing really is it is actually something I've always wanted to do one day. You sit back when you start off your IT career, and it's what do I actually want to achieve? And believe it or not, writing a book was actually one of those things. And it's something that I was lucky enough to be able to do. Many people don't get the chance to do that. Another reason as well, I guess, would be sort of giving back to the community, if you like. I spent many a day earlier on in my career when I was first starting out with systems management and ConfigMgr, obviously SMS, browsing the same websites day in, day out, looking for specific issues that I was having in my own environment, interested in how people were deploying ConfigMgr. Was I doing it the right way? Could I learn from anything? So I guess in another way as well, it was a good thing for me to give something back to all those people that basically do what I used to do and spend hours looking at resources on the internet. So again, just another resource for other people to go out there and say, actually, I am doing it right, or actually that's giving me an idea. So as long as that's what it does, then I'm more than happy.
That's really cool, isn't it, to actually be giving back? It's not as if you decided to make a product that you just wanted to sell. This is actually a life work, so to speak. You've put a lot of time in, I guess, which is the next question I was actually going to ask you is, Martyn, how long did this take?
Yeah, so start to finish, about 10 months. The actual writing of the content was obviously mostly the bulk of that. And quite a lot of it was obviously the editing phase as well. But out of that, I would say a good 7 or 8 months was writing content. The rest was just periphery tasks, sorting out contracts. When was it going to be launched? Where was it going to be sold? What formats was it available in?
And you ended up as Just Digital, or it's a published book as well?
Yeah, so quite lucky to be one of the few with the publisher actually to go on all formats.
Yeah, well, that's why I mentioned it, because actually we've got a book to give away to one of the attendees this evening, and it has signatures from folks over at Redmond and MVPs from the international community. So I know it's in print, but I just wanted you to do a little bit of marketing. That was an opportunity there for you. So, okay, that's a long time actually, 10 months. But just to put this into perspective, that's not actually dedicated man out Monday to Friday 9 to 5 hours. That's working around a day job. Is that right to say? Because you've been at Inframon for 3 years. I'm guessing you didn't take a brief hiatus for 10 months to actually get this out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so that was alongside my usual 9 to 5, if you can call consultancy 9 to 5.
Yeah.
For those people that do consultancy, you'll know exactly what I mean. It actually helped in a way. One of the things that a lot of people don't realise with consultancy is the amount of time you spend away is generally down to where you live. You know, for guys that live in London or the surrounding area, a lot of the work is obviously commutable for those guys. For people like myself in Yorkshire and obviously Peter as well up in Lancashire, it's a lot of time away. And you know, on the weeknights, it was actually quite good to, you know, give myself an actual purpose to do something during the week. So yes, there were things to do with customer documents and, you know, researching some issues we were having on site. The majority of the time, it was good for me to actually dedicate some time on a night while I was away to be able to say, you know, I can spend a good 3 or 4 hours working on this chapter. And in general, the first actual edits of the chapters, if you like, the actual original ones before any reviews, were actually probably the longest part of it. It's actually figuring out what I wanted to put in the specific chapters. The publishers were really good in the fact that they pretty much give me free rein on content. So it was quite good for them to sort of say, you know, we don't have any preconceptions about what we want in the book. You know, you're the expert we're coming to be able to say, you know, what do you think should be in here, and you know, it works pretty well. And so in terms of fitting that in, sometimes it was challenging, especially on big projects when I was working on some big projects, and there was obviously a lot to do, not enough hours in the day, and then also time to write a book alongside it as well. And also as well, you know, some weekend work was involved as well. I'm pretty lucky to have a very understanding wife that's supporting the career path I've chosen and is very supportive of that. So that obviously no doubt helps as well.
Well, I did have actually a question around what kind of sacrifices did you have to make, and I guess a part of the relationship had to be renegotiated so that you could put a lot of your time into this. Obviously, it's not around the table negotiating it if you're building up a contract, but I guess something had to give, or it had to be acknowledged. If you've got a family, because it's quite a commitment, isn't it? You couldn't take a break. Let me ask you this: was you able to take a break, so a week or a month, so to speak, out of this, or did you have quite a tight schedule with the publisher?
So the publishers were actually pretty good. So the first rights to the chapters actually worked out to be round about 4 weeks a chapter, which sounds a lot, but when you start writing a chapter about OS deployment, it's absolutely not. I could have wrote reams of.
Yeah. And I guess you could also, if you don't stop yourself, rewrite what you've done, or keep refining it.
Yeah, you've got to sort of remember your high level, what you wanted in there, and that's quite a big part of the authoring process. Right at the beginning, the publishers were, you know, obviously pretty helpful in the fact that I had not written a book before. I'd obviously not written a book with them before. I guess all publishers are different. So I guess it was. You know, it was good to have that high-level design. I guess in a way, it was not unlike implementing a ConfigMgr engagement, really. So we had a design to work from, we had a high-level overview of what we wanted in each chapter, what the main takeaways were from each chapter, and it was just making sure your content related to that. And the ultimate goal of the chapter was to answer 3 or 4 bullet points on each section, just to make sure we were sort of hitting the nail on the head, if you like.
Yeah, I'm going to take some time out from the questions I've got, the transcript that I'm going through with you now, to ask some of the questions that are coming in via the chat window, Martyn.
Yep, sure,
okay,
yeah.
So let's just crack a couple of these because they're starting to build up now. Okay, the first question is, how many lab environments did you go through when writing the book?
Oh, numerous. I at least 3 that I can remember. Luckily, hydration is a big help, so rebuilding the lab was no problem. The trickiest part was coming to the Intune section and having to take the screenshots of the things I wanted to in Intune. Obviously, a lot of the things with Intune, if anyone's worked with Intune, is it's all irreversible operations. So it's not just a case of reverting a trial back to the beginning and starting again. I had to ask some people at Microsoft very nicely to assist with that. And also use a couple of demo environments for that I also had running as well, and a couple of other email accounts. Obviously, one of the things you can't do with Azure subscriptions and Microsoft Online services is once you've signed up for that free trial, you can't sign up for another one with that email address. So I was actually setting up email accounts left, right, and centre for just to be able to get an Intune trial, because one of them actually finished halfway through writing the chapter. So it was a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect timing.
That was probably the most difficult part for you to orchestrate in your lab, was the mobility side of things, the online side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of resources, it's not too much of a problem. You know, you're not running live demos. You're taking static screenshots of content, so the responsiveness of the lab isn't too much of a problem. So I could have 2 or 3 running at one time.
And what was the hardware that you were running the lab on, Martyn?
So it is actually it's a custom laptop which has a 500 gig SSD. And 16 gig of RAM.
Okay, yeah. So it just goes to show the tools that you really need for this. What else? What other tools did you have hardware-wise? Just that for your virtual lab, and obviously your other machine, I guess, for WinWord, Microsoft Word, and whatever else you were using.
So the tool set, I guess, really is Hyper-V. Obviously, the components I needed to build the lab, so SQL, Windows Server, and ConfigMgr, MDT, and Intune. On the more soft side, obviously Word for editing the content, Outlook for sending the content to the publisher, and then in terms of screenshots, I use an open source program called Greenshot. Which gives you a little bit of flexibility in terms of taking screenshots. It's quite a nice tool. Zooms in on certain parts for you to take quite accurate screenshots on specific measurements if you need to. That's one of the things the publishers were quite hot on, is if I'm taking a picture of a dialog box, for instance, obviously making sure that I'm getting the whole dialog box and not part of it. It's actually quite a small tool set, really.
Okay, that's really, really handy to know. Yeah, it's pretty much a small footprint, isn't it, so to speak?
Yeah.
The next question is from Paul Winstanley, is did you have any concerns when putting all the effort into writing the book with regards to the shelf life regarding the pace of change that takes place? And as a consequence, I guess, and the second question from him is, I guess, expecting you to say yes to the first, do you plan to do revised versions?
So I guess the short answer to both of those is yes and yes. The first one is a big concern, I guess. I mean, although as you know yourself, Rob, from being an MVP, you get pretty privileged access to the product and what's happening, as I do working for Inframon. However, you are always conscious that something might just come up in the next release. So I was very specific around the publisher, around making sure we went for a September-October release, knowing that a major release, I guess, wasn't around the corner, and that all that was coming was potentially cumulative updates, so not a lot was going to change. However, yes, things do change very quick. It could have backfired massively. Thankfully, it didn't. There was a couple of things that I would obviously like to have added off some obviously recent updates that I couldn't, just due to the obviously the schedule from the publisher. And in terms of doing revisions, so, I mean, ultimately that's down to the publisher, but it is something that I would definitely like to do, especially when we hit a VNext stage, when VNext drops. You know, it'd be brilliant to say, well, actually, yeah, you know, we need to do some updates. We just need to be conscious that we're not just doing 2 or 3 pages of additions, that there's actually some tangible content in there. So in terms of updating for minor updates, that probably won't happen. There is an errata on the publisher's website that people can look at. So if anything does sort of come not required anymore, I guess, due to an update from a newer CU package, then it will be noted on the errata. But in terms of revising that into a new publish, that probably won't happen until a VNext version, so ConfigMgr 20, whatever that might be.
Okay, so I guess the takeaway from this is that if you haven't got intimacy with the product group or the product itself via Microsoft channels, that the time it might take a lot longer to actually do revisions or updates to the product. Whereas if you are in a position where you can see it coming up, it's on the radar, you probably get time to actually take your time rather than rushing at the very last minute or having even a larger amount of work thrown on you. So my next question is, how technical were the publishers, Jerry Hampson?
Not very, I guess, is the high level answer to that. I mean, without naming any names, the publishers is actually quite a funny story. So obviously, one of the things the book goes through in the editing process is a plagiarism check.
Okay.
So they basically run it through a tool they have that basically, from what I can gather, searches Google for chunks of text that you have in your Word document that you've submitted across. And obviously one of the big things in there that we obviously need to make sure is that there's not massive chunks of content matching somewhere on the internet. And one of the things, I think it was chapter 2 where I was talking about certificates, I had a script in there, and one of the things that come back from the publisher was, well, you need to revise this. And it's like, well, I can't. It's a script. I actually can't change that. That is how it works. You will find this somewhere else. I can guarantee it. So there was a couple of challenges like that, to be honest. But it's like everything else. They might know bits and pieces, but you're the person writing at the end of the day. So they're looking to you as the person that knows what you're talking about. So in terms of technical knowledge of System Center and ConfigMgr, they had very little. Everything else around it, so from everything from the publishing aspect to, this screenshot's too big, just from looking at it, that they were really good at. So it meant that we could sort that out earlier on rather than get quite a bit further down the line and realise that, well, actually, I need to go take a bunch of these screenshots again. Oh, and guess what? It means I need another Intune subscription.
I sorry to interrupt, but I'm wondering, actually, publisher, I guess it's not a technical shop, so therefore they don't have to be technical. However, because they're producing technical books, they need to validate the technical content coming their way. And you could then imagine that they would need people in-house to do that. But this leads me on to how you collaborated with others on producing your book. So you had not a ghost writer, you actually had people verifying stuff. So do you want to talk about how that part of the over the 10 months, how that worked out for you, Martyn?
Yeah, so it's kind of
Peer review.
yeah, it's a peer review process, I guess. So what actually happens is when you first start up the process, or certainly we're packed anyway. And what happened was they come across and said, we need technical reviewers as you would expect, and as part of this process, can you recommend any? If not, we'll have a look at some people that are available for you. So I put forward one of the guys that was working at our place at the time at Infraborn, so Steve Barnard. He's a ConfigMgr guy himself. He was one of the tech reviewers. And external to that, I was actually pretty lucky to get 3 ECM MVPs. So I mean, Brian Mason was one of the tech reviewers. Greg Ramsey out in the US as well was one of them as well. And Torsten Meringer, who a lot of people probably know from the TechNet forums, he was a reviewer as well. And for me, it was actually really good to have 3 guys who really did know their stuff. And it is actually quite good as well to know that when I'm submitting this content, I'm actually having 3 people who really know what they're doing, looking at the content rather than just a couple. Or 4 people, sorry, actually. So it's actually good from my point of view to sort of validate what I'm actually writing isn't, I'm not making it up. It's actually valid. I know a couple of the guys that were reviewing made a point of testing a lot of the things I was talking about in their labs as well to make sure a lot of the stuff worked that I was saying, you can go off and set this up if you like. So it was really good from that point of view to actually get that as well, and as a thank you for doing that. So I actually put a few things out on Twitter to them all to say thanks after I got published on a specific date it was published, and also they get a free copy of the book as well from the publisher as a thank you, because it's while I'm getting paid as the author, they're giving up their own time as well, and it's quite a time-consuming process for them to sort of come back and say, yes, no, we need to change this, bearing in mind that they have to read everything I've written and try and understand as well.
Martyn, did the reviewers give you a hard time at any time during the process?
There was a couple of points. So the biggest one was around I think it was chapter 3, using inventory. So me and Torsten had without realizing it, I guess you could say a bit of a backward and forward of email reviews between the publisher, and it wasn't that he was wrong in what he was saying. He was absolutely right in what he was saying, that we maybe needed a bit more of a specific subject in there. But what I was mindful of is that I was limited to a specific number of pages per chapter, so I had to try and keep within that and not go too much above it. Otherwise, the book starts to get imbalanced, and we end up with chapters that are 3 times longer than the chapter either side of them, and it's just not nice to read flowing through. So it was quite important to, make sure it was nice and even. But that wasn't something they were aware of. So from a reviewer's point of view, that they're obviously just wanting to make sure that the right information's coming across, and I guess, like we said at the top, it's a massive product, and I could have written 4 or 5 Bible-sized.
Yeah, but something had to give.
But something's got to give, and you got to get some key points in there. And there's obviously a lot of ConfigMgr books out there already, so it was trying to find something different as well.
Are there? I thought yours was the first. Hold on.
Well, yeah, unfortunately not. No.
I think actually we've got about 7, 8, maybe even 10 plus books out there over the last 5 years. Obviously, that brings us back to what Paul Winstanley said about their life cycle, their lifetime.
Yeah.
So Jerry chimed in there to ask you about that. But Danny McDermott was asking about who reviewed your content. So thanks very much for asking that. I'm just going to spin through, see if there's others here. Terence Beggs is asking, can you give an example of a complicated stroke funky operating system deployment?
Yeah, so funky, absolutely. So actually, yeah, a couple of good examples there. So I guess funky would be doing something totally unsupported, which was doing OSD for Linux.
Hey.
Which was interesting. Tried to convince the customer otherwise, I guess, that I'll have a go, I guess was the right word at the time, but that trying to get across to them, that if you have issues with this, you're very unlikely to get any support with it.
Yeah, you're outside the gate, so to speak, looking in. Yeah, that's a good example. So there you go, Terence. That's very exotic for you. Totally exotic. So, okay, there's a There's a tongue-in-cheek question from Peter Edgerton. Can you now afford a private jet from the royalties, and can you commute shorter? In other words, is authoring a good earner?
Yeah. So the helicopter's actually on the roof at the minute as we speak.
It's spinning down, is it, or it's spinning up?
Yeah, the Jeeves, the pilot, is ready to go later on.
You bought the Bat Cave off Batman, just bought him out. So really, is it actually? Obviously, it's a personal thing to ask you how much you're earning, which isn't the question. But in terms of the time invested and whatnot, and if you aren't looking at it as exclusively a donation of your knowledge to the community, what is the financial aspects of it like, without mentioning numbers?
Yes, I think the key thing is that if you're looking to write books for a living, then you're not gonna have a very good quality of life. It's not a big earner, I'd say. In terms of the time you invest, you definitely get a fair return for the time you're investing. It's all paid up in advances, so royalties are paid up in advance. So once you get to a certain level, then the next set of royalties will start coming through. I guess the other thing to remember as well is that although there are lots of people around that do what we do, there's also a tiny market in the world of publishing to sell a book on it. It's a very specific title. It's not like a Harry Potter book, for instance, where it would appeal to numerous sets of people. Writing a technical book instantly limits your audience.
It's very niche.
Yeah, it's absolutely very niche. And if you think that out of that audience, there's going to be a lot of people that don't like reading, so they might just not want to buy it on that perspective. There's a lot of people who will already know what I've been talking about, so that knocks out another set of people. So all the time, the more specific you make the title and the more specific you sort of start writing, and then you're making your pool of people to be able to sell it to ultimately very tiny. So
well, I'm glad you didn't write the Harry Potter book or something like it, because obviously we would have this session tonight. So I guess really, in terms of planes, the only thing that you could afford for this is a paper one, and that this is probably paying for your Starbucks or Costas in the morning on your way to work, as well as looking at it in that perspective, looking at it in that way. So it's not a high earner. To put an answer to that, it's not a high earner.
Not really, no. I think you would have to go up a level technically to be able to make it appeal to a wider audience.
Okay. Yeah,
but I think 'cause it's very niche, just by definition, it's not going to be a huge earner.
It's a moving target, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it doesn't last long. So with your cross-system center skills, here we go. This was asked by Peter Edgerton again. With your cross-system center skills, are you planning any further publications on another product?
So yes, there's a couple of things in the pipeline. One of them not specifically on System Center per se. So it has System Center elements in, it has some ConfigMgr elements in. And there's going to be hopefully that should come off pretty soon, but that will be on EMS, so the Enterprise Mobility Suite. So we're looking at Azure, Active Directory, Windows Intune, obviously with the on-premise connection to ConfigMgr there, and rights management as well. So there's a few things in there to consider, and that's something that at the minute, unless someone's already working on a title, there's a gap in the market in that there's no current published title that talks about EMS. So there's quite a lot of scope for that to start off as a beginner's. This is what it is, this is what it can do for you, this is how it can help your environment, to going through the different stages and making a cookbook of how to do set tasks in EMS, to go into the more advanced level as well, which is what the ConfigMgr book is about. So there's definitely a lot of scope there. And the other ones that I have as well that I've been thinking about are around not orchestrator. I just looked at something that said orchestrator around Azure. So obviously the challenge there is Azure's update cadence is so frequent that you could actually start writing about platform as a service in Azure, and even as little as a month down the line, your content needs to completely change. So there's quite a lot of thought needs to go into that before anything's committed to, but there's a few things that I would definitely like to work on, but ultimately it's down to the publisher on whether they think that's viable or not.
So what I really want to know, Martyn, is are your working colleagues making you the coffee now?
Well, so not as much as I would like, to be honest.
Are you working it at all? Are you working your reputation boost from writing the book? Because I actually think they should be making coffees. I know Peter Edgson's on the call now.
Yeah, so he's
every
actually
day he should come in with one for you. He's blessed to have.
He's actually the worst for making coffee. I don't think he's ever made me a coffee.
Send him down to Starbucks or Costa or whatever.
It's not going to happen, I'm afraid.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you personally, Martyn. I'm not wrapping this up because I actually want to just thank you for attending personally. But what I'd like to do is, in a moment, we're going to move on to the Q&A around ConfigMgr, where we can all chime in, unmute your mics, we'll just have a friendly chat about stuff that we're up to. But before I do, I just wanted to hand over to some of the other WMUG teamies to see if they wanted to throw in any more questions at you, Martyn, and then we'll move on after that. Don't all speak at once, guys. But are there any other questions you would like to ask, Martyn, before we move on?
Nothing from my side. I think I've thrown one or two in there already. I'll give the others a chance if they want to ask anything.
No, it was a pretty insightful discussion there. It was nice to hear.
It was, yeah. I found this very helpful. I haven't written a book myself, Martyn, and I've actually got a couple of, well, I've got one in particular in OneNote that's been there for a while, and I pick it up and drop it, and it seems to be something that just swings into my mind, and then I just get bored of it and put it away. So I actually applaud you for having the commitment to follow this through. I know that you haven't written War and Peace here. You've written a significant item, though, and so I applaud you for doing so. Well done.
Thank you.
Question for you, Martyn, then. I've just got one. So Jonathan, who's on the call now, you posed a question earlier about anyone who could recommend any UK-based sort of events. And I know you do speaking from time to time. Have you any plans afoot this year for any UK-based or any other international-based speaking events?
So hopefully, I'm waiting to hear back on the MS Ignite sessions in Chicago. That's obviously a little further afield. Obviously that's quite a big change this year in terms of Microsoft's events, and the way they're actually doing it is actually very different as well. So rather than submitting sessions this year to start with, they're asking for speakers, and then they'll work on obviously sessions when the speakers have been decided. So hopefully there as well. I'm not doing anything myself personally next week, but I know Tech Days Online is next week, I believe.
Yep.
So there's obviously that coming up as well. And another great resource as well, and I know this Peter does quite a lot on the TechNet UK blog, but they quite often have quite a lot of cool content on there. So not just people writing blogs, but they often have links to videos and some other events as well. And a really good place to keep looking is obviously the WMUG site for when the guys post up events up there, but also Microsoft's event site as well. I think it's microsoft.com/events. You get quite a lot of partner events go on there as well. So like when us at Infraron, when we run events, they'll quite frequently go up onto the Microsoft events page, as will other partners' sessions and events, as well as all the ones that Microsoft run themselves as well. So there's quite a few out there, and then obviously your search engine of choice is a good source as well. So it's quite often how I used to find events to go to. But other than that, this year is potentially pretty quiet at the minute. Potentially as well. I'm just trying to think what's later in the year. So again, a bit further afield, but Dev IT Connections that Rod Trent's got a lot to do with now, the guy from my IT Forum. I very nearly went out to that last year, but unfortunately couldn't make it. So hopefully this year, maybe get a trip out there to hopefully do some sessions out there later this year. But it's like everything else. So ultimately, time will tell. With speaking, it's quite often you can find out a couple of weeks before that some events coming up. But yeah, you just keep checking the regular channels, and you'll be almost certain to find something that suits your need.
Cool. Just to drop a further one in for Jonathan, Systems Centre Universe is a pretty cool event.
Yeah.
I think that's even next week maybe, or the week after, the US one.
Yeah, so
You can
Systems
watch
Centre
online.
Universe is massive, yeah, and that's, like you say, that's in the US next week. They do a European one as well later in the year.
Yeah, so I think the US one is streamed online, and the European one, which is in Switzerland, I believe,
Yeah, that's right.
is due about September, October, I hear. It's not been announced just yet.
There's quite a lot of activity there, isn't there, this year? A lot of stuff planned. Keep an eye on the WMUG as well for our Twitter. You'll see that we'll be planning some events this year, hard events, physical ones, as well as more of these WMUG clinics. In fact, just listening to you guys, I think perhaps our next session that we do along this lines would probably be presenters. Get a load of presenters on the call. Could talk about experiences and go over the similar stuff that we have with Martyn today as an author. Well, do we have any more questions? I don't see anything more coming in there. So what I'm going to do is thank you very much on behalf of everybody. It's been a very fruitful, insightful session with you. And thank you very much for joining us, Martyn.
Yeah, no problem.
You stick around and we'll have you and join us in the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what we'll do is we have Martyn's book here. It's got loads of, yeah, well done, yeah, virtual clap. We've got loads of signatures on that book, and I'm going to get your names, put them on a bit of paper. I'm going to let my 4-year-old boy choose you, so there is no bias, obviously. I haven't offered to buy him some Lego dinosaurs, so he chooses a specific one. So we'll pull the name out, and I'll get in touch with you because you've got your email address in this contact list, and in this text box, sorry, and I'll send it over to you. So the Q&A now. Basically, if you've got any stories or stuff that you've been up to with System Center, Configuration Manager, you want to talk about now, I could kick it off. I was at a client this week, and for a one-day review of their site, why it's acting strange, and it turns out that they hadn't checked properly. They had a Active Directory group policy set for bits to reduce it to 1K per second, and it had some really bizarre effects because OSD would work reasonably okay because it's all cache content and it goes over SMB if it needs to, but the clients themselves and the site was really acting bizarre, and backlogging and all kinds of stuff was happening because bits is heavily used by the client. It was just funny to stumble into this, and the guys hadn't peeled it back and had a proper look to see what was going on. It's funny what one little setting in one place can do to the product overall and completely break it. So this week I saw ConfigMgr in a really weird state. In fact, it was producing stuff in the logs I've never seen before, messages in the logs. It wasn't crash dumping or anything like that, it was just didn't make sense. Sorted out bits and everything snapped back into life. There you go, that's my story. DBAs, yeah, there's a story. I've got several actually, but I won't. Does someone else got a story they want to throw out there, or stuff that they want to talk about at the moment? A problem they've got?
I was going to throw out if anyone's been looking at Windows 10 much and first thoughts really, and sort of deployment by ConfigMgr and in-place upgrades. I don't know if anyone's been playing with it.
I've just today actually. I've not had a lot of time to play around with it, but I've just upgraded my Surface Pro to the is it 9926 build of Windows 10, the latest one. So probably after this call, I might go away and have a tinker with that.
Is it something you've clicked on yet and tried out, or?
Only for maybe 5 minutes after I did it earlier today. Left it running.
I managed to deploy it last night and to a VM and through Hyper-V, and I couldn't actually click on anything once it had been deployed. I was kind of excited because people have said it's like a new release almost, and comes away from that 8.1 look and feel, but I couldn't actually click on anything to try anything out, so I have no idea.
Just a login screen or a desktop or whatever.
Yeah.
I've looked over someone's shoulder for a few minutes, like Peter there, and I've got all the tooling here downloaded, ready to do it, but it's just I haven't managed to get around to it yet. In fact, what I've been doing is keeping up on activity on that with Niall Brady, actually. Funny enough, he's doing a lot of blogging about it, but we also get to talk to him on a private MVP list. We see a lot of the stuff that he's going through. So I kind of keep my finger on the pulse, but I haven't actually put it out there. So how did you actually implement it, Paul? You just did you follow any guides, Niall's guides, or
well,
cobble it together yourself?
Excuse me, I've done the in-place upgrade. Bear with me. And also just created a basic clean task sequence. So the one I did last night, I kind of blogged it, which was just how to deploy. Here's the WIM file. Yeah, you can do it. It's not supported. And then the in-place upgrade is part of the TAP program, just to push it out and get users playing with it and using it. That had an interesting little feature or issue which I threw out to the SMS mailing list, which was if you had what it does is basically it redeploys the ConfigMgr clients after the in-place upgrade, and because the if you'd patched it with the patch command point that reference your SMS task sequence folder, it broke your client because that folder didn't exist anymore and the patch wasn't there and that kind of thing. So that was quite interesting. Did a little bit of work trying to fudge it to get it to work and redeploy the client and repatch it. But in the end, after discussions, Microsoft said, look, don't worry about it. When it comes to actual rollout, we're not going to have to worry about it. There's going to be a new client to deal with, and we're going to do it that way. So yeah, I've not actually used Windows 10 itself though, so I was kind of keen to get a feel for people using that.
Yeah, I noticed quite a change in the startup menu. Obviously, you've probably seen there's a new start menu, which should keep a lot of people happy, but I noticed in the latest build that you can expand the start menu to full screen, as opposed to the sort of the basic start menu, I guess, that they had before.
And are we all going to go into holographic worlds as well?
I don't know. I was rather hoping not in my lifetime. David Scambler has mentioned that he's. Let me just roll back up because he said something interesting there about this. Before they started talking about Yorkshire, and quite a lot of people on the call are coming from Yorkshire. So, Windows 10 is great. He's done a pilot deployment using MDT for 20 users at a client site last week, and that all went smoothly, Dave. I guess we'll park that. Here, type it, and we'll come back to it. He says his microphone is packed up. So yeah, as he types it, I'll read it out. But are there others on the call that have fiddled around with Win 10 actually as a pilot inside a company? I haven't had anybody ask me for that yet.
Yeah, I've had a couple of people want to play around with it to see what's coming. I've got it on another laptop myself. Actually, I'm pretty impressed with it so far. It's it's a couple of builds back, to be honest. But it's pretty good as far as I can see. I think that a lot of the stuff you can see coming, and I think we've seen it coming from Windows 8 and even probably Windows 7, to be fair. But I think they're starting to focus a lot more on the things that actually matter to the user, which is obviously good to see. Which, personally, in my opinion, are applications and state. As far as the user's concerned, I've got my new laptop. Can I access the applications I had before? Yes, I can. We can manage that with ConfigMgr quite easily now. And the other thing I like as well is, just being able to sign in using my Microsoft account and getting all my settings down on my Wi-Fi profiles. That takes a big chunk out of having to use USMT for a big chunk of stuff as well. But yeah, I keep checking the feedback site, the public one, keep seeing what people are putting on, and there's definitely some interesting ideas out there. Whether people actually do them or not is a different thing. But I think it's got a pretty good future from what I've seen so far.
I was actually reading an article today about the new engine they've got in there. I don't know the words they've got for them now, the Coupland, but it's actually got a new web engine built in. It's tucked away, it's not fully implemented and exposed. It's exposable via Hackery, but you can actually get it fully switched on. And the article was comparing that with Firefox and Chrome and such like, and it said it was quite punchy. I didn't get enough time to fully read it, but it sounded to me like they'd really made big advancements on that. I just want to read off that Peter Edgerton did mention that customers like the £0 idea so far. Do you want to elucidate on that a little bit, Peter? So people know?
Well, actually, just looking further in the comments, people are saying that it's just the home or professional editions that are going to be free, not necessarily enterprise versions.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I know that they were offering the 10 for consumers. There's another Terence Beggs mentions that showing his staff Windows 10 or even 8.1 is like performing witchcraft. They want to stick with Windows 10, so it sounds like it's a little bit too premature for them to jump to. David Scambler followed up by saying yes, the rollout, the pilot has gone well. Using MDT, not ConfigMgr, as he said. They are a development house, so wanted to have a play with it and be able to just wipe and load. So wanted an OSD image set up, and so he got that done. It's a pretty straightforward process. And Jonathan just said what Peter mentioned, isn't it? Just home editions that will be free. Have we got anything else in here? Terence is saying it's got XP. A lot of people have, funny enough. A lot of hospitals in the United Kingdom are running XP still.
Yeah, a lot of places I still see around are running XP. It's a big job to move.
Finsbury Park train station. I did tweet them.
Why would you call out that particular train station and XP?
No, that's where I go in the morning.
That's genuine.
The Windows screen was there, the Windows XP, and I tweeted them. I said maybe time for a refresh, and they took it as maybe time to reboot the machine and get it working properly. And it's been like that for a month. I can't be bothered telling them again.
It sounds like another satirical tweet is needed to point out that the whole world is migrating right now, and it might be a good idea if they followed suit. There's actually a mention here from Peter Edgerton. I'll put all of these links in the video and up on the posting, which we'll update over the coming days on the WMUG website. But he says there's a link here to Johan Arwidmark, I'm guessing, an upgrade video that he's produced as probably part of his deployment artist series.
That's it. So it's his deployment news that he does. He's done an upgrade special. So he's decided to upgrade his production machine, which has got 300 plus applications on it. And he's captured the sequence and sort of done it in fast forward and done it in about an 8-minute video, and it just takes you through the process. To be honest, it's not necessarily using ConfigMgr or anything. It's a sort of standalone upgrade. It takes you through the process and shows you a couple of tips and hints of files you can edit here and there. So it's probably worth 8 minutes of your time if you plan on doing it.
You say 300 apps?
300 plus apps, things like Adobe Read, not Adobe Reader, Adobe,
So-
Creative Suite, and
At
all
the end of
sorts
the
of
video,
video
what, he's
editors.
got 5 apps?
That's a migration manager's headache. That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many apps?
I think that if you've got the manager to look at that machine, there's only 4 on there that you need.
Yeah.
Wipe and load. Cliff Hobbs says, Terence, that reminds me when I had XP and was offered Vista. Which made me chuckle. I remember being in businesses and Vista was being proposed as a viable upgrade path while Microsoft were touting Win 7 in the pipeline. It's, yeah, back in the days, eh? Other things that we've got here, there's a in-place upgrade link from Paul about that. Yeah, Windows 10. So, no, I haven't tried that myself personally, but I think we've done that one to death. Stay tuned, we'll come back when there's been more development with Windows 10 and its seamless integration into ConfigMgr. Although I'm going to tolerate everybody this evening talking about MDT, but just note that I'm a purist and I will stand ConfigMgr up as a primary standalone site server without any bolt-ons, unless actually I'm forced to with hot irons and such like.
Can I ask a question here, actually? Because you can't export MDT-based task sequences or tasks in a config manager task sequence, which is extremely frustrating when you are migrating. If you're integrating, why can't you export it and import it back in? Not let you put those elements in. I've not tried it, and
I believe the answer is because the storage medium, the file that they use, the way that they store it is different between the two engines. They're not exactly the same, so they're not compatible. There's a lot of customizations in the MDT team.
but are you talking there from standalone to integrated?
No, I'm talking about an actual MDT task sequence is standalone, just not being able to be pulled across.
Yeah, but if you've got an integrated task sequence, so you've got say for example config manager task sequence with some MDT steps in there. If I export that, can I import that back in with MDT steps, or do I have to recreate those steps, don't I?
Well, if you do that between servers, config manager servers, with both have MDT integration, I think the only problem you have is bedding in which packages are used for the configure and all the other bits and pieces. But I'm not sure if you can actually take a config manager integrated task sequence and export that to pure MDT. I'm not sure.
No.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, no, you can't do that.
No, there's a limitation if you're migrating from 2007, for example, that's got an MDT integration. Because it's a different version of MDT, you can't migrate those task sequences.
Yeah, David Scambler just pointed that out. If both versions of the MDT are the same, so that works. Yeah, same version of MDT with integrated both ends.
Okay.
So what I was talking of MDT and config manager and stuff not marrying up together. One of the stories I quite like about it is when you're installing applications as part of an MDT task sequence, you get that task sequence step collect applications to set the variable. And I don't know if this is true, but I heard that the MDT team set the variable to be a maximum of 99, so 2 digits. However, the config manager team were expecting it to be 3 digits, and they couldn't agree between themselves which one was which. So the MDT team had to write a script to convert it to basically append a 0 on the front, so it'd work in config manager. I don't know if that's true. Oh yeah, 3 to 2. Sorry, as Terence just says. So yeah, the other way around. So yeah, MDT will pass it in as 3, so you'll be able to say applications 001, 2, 3, 4, 5, but config manager won't do that. It'll only do it as applications 0, 1, 2, so you can only have a maximum of 99 theoretically. And that's what the collect application script does. It takes one variable, knocks a 0 off, and assigns it to another variable. And yeah, I heard that was because they had a bit of a tiff between each other.
A commercial lovers tiff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
internal,
know how true that is, but it seems a bit bizarre.
I don't actually remember if that that clear enough to be able to say yes. I was going to say to Cliff, do you remember? Because I do remember Johan Ardwick, Mark Bleaton about quite a lot of things with the integration, and it does ring a bell about 3 digits and 2 and the number 99. But for the life of me, I couldn't recall it was clear. Confirm it. I'm sure it's there if you say it's there. And that they had a fight, and that there was blood, and
Well, yeah.
Somebody
Blood's
got angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Same as Cliff. He says he can remember something around that, but it's very, very foggy. Yeah, he puts it on his age, but I think that's just a cop out. Not being able to recall it, that is. We get on. So, other things that we could cover with anyone put together a really cool solution recently for ConfigMgr? A little bit of customness, scripto, glue, things, fun.
Not particularly. I'm doing something a little bit different at the moment, which is putting ConfigMgr in Azure.
How's that going?
Slowly. We've not got the service provisioned yet. But as you know, not all roles are necessarily supported when you're running it in Azure. More than previously used to be supported, but still not obviously every role.
There's
The obvious one being OSD. But, I don't know if anyone else has done that. If there's anything I should keep an eye out for.
Credit card.
Yeah, there is that. There's sufficient funds in the subscription though to keep us going for a little while.
Without giving off everything about the customer, but what's their plans for it then? They're going to have internet-based clients, are they? They're going to treat everything as internet.
So the customer is a large services company. That's about as specific as I'll get on it. And they are doing a mass migration over a number of years, starting round about now, of any on-premises kit, basically moving into the cloud.
Okay.
So they are starting by putting System Center in as the backbone, I suppose, to monitor, so with Ops Manager and manage other servers with ConfigMgr, maybe extending that out later into clients.
Oh, tenants? Do you mean are they setting it up so that they can become multi-tenant or something?
No, not necessarily. No, just to manage their own stuff.
It just went over me because you were talking about cloud.
Yeah.
Do you get it? Cloud.
I get it.
High up in a... It's actually because I'm getting distracted now because we've run over and I haven't told anybody. We're 10 minutes over, and I was just looking through the text chat here to see if there's anything I could hoover up before we wrap up for the evening. Terence mentions that he's currently changing the boot. He's changing the boot wallpaper if OSD fails and sending a notification to his phone when it's done. Could you what's that middle piece that you're using to actually get to the phone, Terence, from an OSD task sequence?
It's Michael's, don't forget.
Yeah, sorry, and I'm just now waiting for him to write back to us. So go and make a cup of tea. Hold on.
I actually did quite a similar thing when I was working out in the States, not last year, the year before, for a customer. And it turns out what a lot of the mobile providers in the States do is, so for instance, if you're with Verizon Mobile, you can email your mobile and it'll send it as an SMS message. So it makes it really easy to send text message notifications. So you can basically email your mobile number at verizon.com and it'll send it as an SMS message to your phone. And I actually looked at doing something similar here a few weeks ago, but none of the mobile providers in the UK do that.
That's interesting. It's going to be nice to have. Terence mentions that he's using an email and push over, which I'm not really familiar with. It's an iOS app.
Boo.
Yeah. What did you bring that up for? No, laugh out loud.
Can someone kick him out?
Yeah, he's actually banned now. He can't read. I've just took him out in the lobby. I'm joking aside. iOS, Winos, whatever os. We love it all. So David Scambler mentions that you tried to get OSD to tweet him last year, which is genius, actually. Is that so that you can kind of like build some artificial intelligence system around the world with world domination, David, or is it just because you felt like it? Every phone in the world will ring at the same time because David's OSD pushed everybody? Yeah, as I thought. Yeah. Just bored one day.
Yeah, I think we all have those days where it's like, oh, what crazy nonsense can I make ConfigMgr do today?
What can I make it do today? Yeah, make it jump through some hoops. So I'm going to thank everybody this evening. Thank you very much for coming. And before I actually finish the call, I'm just going to make sure I've got the text in here saved so that that's good and in place. Thank you very much, Martyn, again for coming tonight. That was awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
And I hope to see everybody again at some point over the year on another WMUG clinic.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.